Alright, ladies and gentlemen, today we're talking about a letter. And it's not just any ordinary letter, it's a letter written by the brand new mayor of New York City, Zohran Mamdani. And he's written this letter to an Indian in an Indian jail, Umar Khalid. This act of solidarity is not just a friendly hello, it's a spotlight. It's a spotlight on the shocking double standards and a political agenda that needs to be exposed. Zohran Mamdani writes, Dear Umar, I think of your words on bitterness often. We are all thinking of you. Very touching, very poetic, Mr. Mamdani. But I have some very direct and uncomfortable questions for you. Why? Why are you thinking of him? The world is on fire, Mr. Mayor. Innocents are dying by the thousands in wars that you've actually commented on. Families are being torn apart by conflicts from Eastern Europe to the Middle East. Yet your pen did not find its way to them. Your thoughts, it seems, are highly selective. They traveled over 7,000 miles, bypassing a planet of suffering to land precisely on the desk of Umar Khalid. Now let's be clear. Yes, in the eyes of the law, Umar Khalid is still an accused. He's not a convict. He's denied the charges in the Delhi riots case. But that is not my point. My question to you, Mr. Mamdani, is not about the legal guilt or innocence of Umar Khalid. It's about your moral calculus. And you choose to publicly write this letter to and think of as a very public history. A history not of the 2020 riots, but for what he chose to resent prior to that. Umar Khalid was recorded leading protests, and the slogans weren't about generic justice. They were on the death anniversary of Afzal Guru, a man convicted and executed for the 2001 terrorist attack on the Indian Parliament, the very symbol of Indian democracy. A man convicted, executed, and who himself confessed on camera to his role in the 2001 terrorist attack on the Indian Parliament. In fact, there's a video interview from 2001 where he spills it all. I helped them, took training in Pakistan. He named the attackers Muhammad, Rana, Raja, Hamza, Haider, and admitted his role in smuggling them in. The courts upheld it. The Supreme Court said it was to satisfy the collective conscience. Executed in 2013. Done deal. Umar Khalid was not protesting against capital punishment in general, Mr. Mayor. He was leading chants that were not abstract but terrifyingly specific. The slogans were specific. Afzal hum sharminda hai, tere qatil zinda hai. कितने अफजल मारोगे हर घर से अफजल निकलेगा भारत तेरे टुकड़े होंगे इंशाअल्लाह इंशाअल्लाह. Now let's translate this for an American audience actually, Mr. Mayor. Let's find your moral equivalent here. Let's look at this from an American perspective. Imagine it's September 11th. At ground zero, amidst the families of the 2009-77 murdered, a man stands up. He holds up a microphone and he leads the crowd to a new chant. Osama, we are ashamed. Your killers are still alive. How many Osamas will you kill? And Osama will emerge from every American household. America, we will break you into pieces. Now, Mr. Mamdani, my question to you is simple. It's direct. It requires a simple yes or no. Would you, as the mayor of New York City, the city that bore the deepest scars of 9/11, write a letter of solidarity to that man? Would you seek out his parents, shake their hands and tell them, I think of your son's words on bitterness often? Would you call his 5-year pre-trial detention unjust and marshal your congressional colleagues to write to a foreign ambassador on his behalf? Of course you wouldn't. You'd be thrown out of office. You'd be condemned from coast to coast. You'd be arrested by the FBI. And you know what? You would deserve it. Because that man wouldn't be a student activist. He wouldn't be a human rights defender. He would be a monster, giving voice to the ideology that murdered your citizens. So I ask you again, why Umar Khalid? Is it because the victims of the parliament attack weren't American? Is it because the soldiers killed in Pulwama or the civilians targeted in the ethnic violence in Bangladesh, they don't fit the narrative that gets you applause in certain political circles? Which brings me to my second question. Where is your letter to the victims? Where is your handwritten note to the family of the security personnel that lost their lives defending the Indian Parliament in the attack orchestrated by Afzal Guru, a man on whose death anniversary Umar Khalid was protesting and quoting chants against the Indian government? Where is your concern for the families of the 40 Indian soldiers massacred in the 2019 Pulwama terrorist attack? Where is your we are thinking of you for the families of the Hindus who've died in Bangladesh in the last couple of months? Remember Deepu Chandra Das, December 2025, accused of blasphemy, beaten to death by a mob amid protests? One among at least 5 Hindus who've been killed in post-Hasina violence. UN reports up to 1,400 dead in crackdowns. Minorities like Hindus targeted as Awami League allies. Temples torched, families fleeing. 1,000 attacks since August 2024. Al Jazeera called it a fear factory. What about their lives? Their lives don't matter? Where's your letter to them, Mr. Mayor? Thinking of you to the Das family? Or the Sopore Hindus massacred in the 1971 genocide? Does that does that echo? Nothing? Your silence is the answer. It screams that your concern is not for justice, but for a very specific, politically useful kind of victim. Where was this righteous pen when your serving president, Mr. Donald Trump, hosted a former ISIS terrorist who's now the current Syrian president at the White House? The silence is deafening. It tells us everything. This isn't about your universal human rights. This is a selective, politically driven agenda. You meet with Khalid's parents, but not with 1,000 other grieving parents. Your solidarity has a very clear, very convenient address. And this is the real game. This letter isn't just from Zohran Mamdani. You know what? It's part of a pattern. Other US lawmakers also writing to the Indian ambassador about Khalid. Why this intense foreign interest in one specific Indian case? It's because Khalid is a cause célèbre for certain political wings. There is external pressure being applied to India's judicial process in an attempt to influence Indian politics by dressing it up as human rights advocacy. And some factions within India are all too happy to encourage this, to use this foreign validation for their own domestic battles. So, Mayor Mamdani, here's my final question to you. Do you or do you not support the slogans that chanted by Umar Khalid calling for India's breakup, or everything that Umar Khalid is associated with? Do you believe that protesting for a convicted terrorist is an act of human rights? Until you answer these questions clearly, your letter isn't solidarity. It's complicity. It's a political stunt that insults the memory of every victim of terrorism that you've chosen to ignore. The game is transparent, Mr. Mamdani. You pick a cause overseas that aligns with your domestic political faction. You ignore its horrific content, and you perform an act of brave solidarity for your audience. It's cheap. It's dangerous. If you're thinking of anyone, think of the victims of terrorism, not just the people who come for your rallies, to play to the tune of their ears. We see this hypocrisy. The world sees this hypocrisy. And history will record and remember this. Remember that, Mr. Mamdani.